Earlier today, we learned that prosecutors informed the judge they will no longer pursue theories that the hip-hop mogul was involved in attempted arson and attempted kidnapping. This as both sides have now decided to rest their case. Joining us to discuss this and so much more is Mackenzie Joy Brennan, trial attorney, back here on the Live Zone. Good to see you, Mackenzie.
Boy, it's always evolving, isn't it? Every time I see you.
I got to tell you, my mouth literally dropped this morning when I heard this on the way in. So let's start with the big story of the day, and that is what I heard on the way in and what you heard me just say. I'll say it again. The prosecution no longer pursuing the theory that Diddy was involved in attempted arson and attempted kidnapping. Why in the heck did they decide to do this?
So I think I've seen some confused reporting on this, and the bottom line is that none of the charges that we're familiar with, so the trafficking of prostitution, 2 counts of that, 2 counts of sex trafficking, and then 1 RICO violation, none of that is gone. So basically, you got to remember that the federal government has an upwards of 90% conviction rate. So they know what they're doing, they know what they've proven, and they know what they haven't. So what they did today in the charging conference was strike some of those predicate acts that were related to the racketeering conspiracy. And if you recall, that had at least two predicate crimes that had to be shown to prove that there's a pattern of crimes committed in this business enterprise. So we saw a lot of evidence of different potential crimes. There was the forced labor with both Mia and Jane, narcotics distribution with Brendan Paul, sex trafficking as a predicate crime, bribery, extortion with both the security guard and Cassie's mother. So there are a lot of predicate crimes on the table. What they took away, because they don't think they've proved these as predicates, are Kid Cudi's arson allegation and the alleged kidnapping charge related to Capricorn Clark when she said that his security guard held her in a building.
All right, so Mackenzie, yet again, you got to put this in layman's terms for folks like me that are just trying to wrap our heads around all of this. So let's say with all the charges that happen to be on the table, and I'm just making a number up so I could better understand this. Let's say he faced 100 years. With
Sure.
what they took away, if he's convicted on all counts now, how many years would he face behind bars?
So that's kind of the point. It doesn't change the charges that he's facing, so it doesn't change the number that he may serve, and the number is massive. So he easily could spend the rest of his life in prison. This potentially could impact the judge's discretion in sentencing, but the bottom line is if they prove these crimes, they still prove it even without these stricken charges. So he's looking at, easily 80 years.
Wow.
And potentially the rest of his life.
Yeah, that's why I'm so glad we have you on, Mackenzie. You really clear all of this up for us. Speaking of clearing it all up, a lot of folks saying, hey, if someone said I did something and I know I didn't do it, I would easily stand on the top of a mountain and yell, I didn't do it. In this case, take the stand. Diddy opted not to do that. Why?
Well, I don't know that it was his decision. In fact, when he stood up to say that he would not be testifying, he said, it is my choice, well, me and my lawyers. And he seemed to have a lot to say, frankly. When he stood up, he thanked the judge for doing such a good job. That to me is a questionable tactic because it struck me as a little bit condescending, but obviously sucking up a little bit as well. He seemed to want to talk, but imagine that cross-examination and what doors it would open into his character and drug addiction and other things that maybe aren't crimes that have come out, but just bad character. It would have been more of a mess than it would have been an assist to the defense. So, they didn't call any witnesses. Anything was a negative for them, so they kind of stayed very quiet.
All right, so correct me if I'm wrong, but to my count, in all, 34 witnesses took the stand for the prosecution. Is that normal for a case like this? Would we normally see less, the same amount, and or more?
Well, I think to compare it to other cases is tough because this is such a massive scale, and the charges themselves. I mean, look at how many years he's facing. 2 of the charges, it could be 20 years. For the sex trafficking, it's 15 years each. For RICO, it's 30 to life. So for anything of this scale, you're going to see the government lay out their case very clearly. And the federal government is the best at doing that because they cross their T's and dot their I's. So yes, it's very long, and we're looking at closing statements of 4 hours each. That's
wow.
Above normal, but it's an abnormal case, right?
Yeah. All right. So we'll end with this, and that is we know that attorneys are meeting with the judge today to discuss jury instructions. You got little old me here again. I don't know how this all works. What exactly unfolds with the jury instructions?
So there's even, a framing and a positive and negative to each side of how the jury is instructed on these charges. So, for example, the sex trafficking charge is really hotly debated because there's all this question about what words we can give the jury about consent and about coercion. So the prosecution has submitted their proposed instructions, and it explains to the jury that, it doesn't have to be physical force. It can be threats, it can be psychological coercion, it can be reputational harm that somebody faces. And then, of course, the defense will submit their proposed instructions that probably frame it a little bit more as if you think that somebody consented, or if you've seen videos where somebody is consenting, you may take that into consideration, kind of suggesting that maybe more force is required. So those are the kind of perspectives going into how instructions are written, and we'll see what the judge ends up landing on.
And obviously, once that happens, it then falls in the hands of the jury. I think, 8 men, 4 women? Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. And so typically, if the jury comes back very quickly, that means what? If they take some time, that means what?
I mean, obviously, no hard and fast rule. There are plenty of cases that break the rule, but if it comes back quickly, generally that is a conviction. The longer it goes, the more you think that they're debating that somebody's a holdout, and at the very least a mistrial, potentially a not guilty.
All right. Well, as they say, it is showtime. And yet again, Diddy's life now in the hands of a jury. This has been so interesting to see how all of this has unfolded. And you've done such an amazing job helping us better understand it. Yet again, we've been speaking with Mackenzie Joy Brennan, trial attorney, joining us right here on the Live Zone. We'll chat soon, Mackenzie.
Thank you so much for having me.
You got it.